Let me now share with you some information regarding this reference to Enoch, because you notice here, just like in the prior day's reading, he references and quotes the Assumption of Moses. He quotes what Michael said to the devil about Moses' body. So he obviously had a copy of it at that time that they were aware of and used and accepted to some extent. So in the same way, many of you we've all heard of Enoch, but, and many of us have probably heard of the books of Enoch. There are 3 books at least that are attributed to him, but the first one is really the most credible in terms of its manuscript authority and content. So what I want to do is share with you a note on in my critical edition of the letter of Jude. If you look in the description below, you'll see a link to the CWJah forum where you'd have to register because it's only for active CWJs, and that's where I keep my translation. But I've also separately published translations of some texts, one of which is the letter of Jude. So if you go to the Elihu Online Papers link and you look at the last paper listed, number 5, it's the letter of Jude, a new translation according to P72, the earliest text we have of Jude. And if you go into the text, it starts out with the translation, and then it has little symbols for notes. You follow the symbol for verses 14 and 15 regarding this reference to Enoch, and it's going to take you to note Omicron, or what looks like an O, but they're in Greek letters. So it's right here. And you get it so I think you all can see it best. It might be a little too big, so we'll just go down. There we go. And of course, you can, the link is below. You can go and look at it. But let's read this brief portion together regarding verses 14, 15. I could have just summarized it, but I think my note here says it pretty well. So there's no point in me trying to restate it. Let's just read it together so you can also understand the information available in my critical document. So this is from pages 7 and 8, note Omicron, or what looks like an O, to verses 14 and 15, involving Enoch. Let's read it together. Here in verses 14 and 15, Jude refers to what was known as a prophecy from Enoch, the 7th man from Adam. And then I reference the text that refer to Enoch in the Bible, Genesis 4:17, and then compare that with 1 Enoch 68, if you have a text of 1 Enoch. And you could probably find one online. And then the rest of the note. Let's just read this together. It won't take long. The book known as 1 Enoch, okay, this is very important, comes primarily from a 15th century, so like 500 years ago, CE Ethiopic version, which preserves the entire works. This is our earliest complete copy. Not that old, but it is based on earlier texts. And we have some texts from the Dead Sea Scrolls. So let's keep reading. But 1 Enoch also has textual support from some Greek and Latin fragments, mostly from the 6th and 8th century CE, or from the 500s and 700s, except for the Chester Beatty Michigan papyrus dated to the 4th century, or the 300s, very close to the text of P72, although that may be 3rd century, and so the 200s. So the Chester Beatty papyrus, the Michigan papyrus, dated to the 4th century, preserves Enoch, 1 Enoch 97:6 through 107:3. There are a lot of chapters in Greek. More important, fragments of the book of 1 Enoch were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, which preserve Aramaic portions of 1 Enoch dating from the late 3rd century BCE. Okay, so several hundred years before Jude, before Jesus. And then I referenced the texts of Enoch in the Dead Sea Scrolls, 4Q, En, A through G superscript, and 4Q, in Aster, A through D superscript, and 1Q Giants A through B. These are all texts that you could search, and you'll see the extent to which we have fragments preserving the book of Enoch several hundred years before Jude. So when Jude is quoting from Enoch, or the Assumption of Moses, we have evidence these texts existed in a more complete form before our earliest text in Ethiopic from the 15th century. So these Dead Sea Scroll fragments are incredibly important because they document the existence of this text before the time Jude wrote his letter. Okay, and the words used by Jude in verses 14 through 15, and then I quote right here, and quote it, we just read it, that comes from 1 Enoch 1:9. What Jude is quoting, with slight variation in wording due to the nature and application of Enoch 1:9. In other words, he's adapting the text for his own purpose and what he's writing to the Christians for about these infiltrators. P72 therefore becomes a 3rd century Greek witness to the text of 1 Enoch 1:9. So in the same way that Jude becomes a 3rd century, remember 200s, witness through P72 of the Assumption of Moses' lost ending involving Michael the Archangel and Satan, really our earliest, because Galatius of the 5th century is our other reference to that text. It's all, Jude is not only a text, preserves a text, our earliest text, I should say, of the lost ending of the Assumption of Moses, but it preserves our earliest Greek text of 1 Enoch 1:9. Which is supported by the Aramaic fragments of 1 Enoch in 4Q in C, superscript C of the text that I referenced up here, A through G. So the text that Jude quotes has support, unlike the Assumption of Moses, which we don't have support for the lost ending before Jude. The text he quotes in Jude 14 and 15 has support from 4Q and C. And then I referenced this writing by Osborne, Discourse Analysis and Jewish Apocalyptic in the Epistle of Jude, if you want more information. And I quote Osborne on page 9, last part of what I'll read, in verses 5 through 16, which includes the text we're referencing in Jude now, for Enoch 14 and 15. Jude has utilized a historical incident in Numbers, supported by several well-known pseudepigraphal sections in contemporary literature, as a fundamental warning that the ungodliness of the intruders would result in certain condemnation when Jesus returns in eschatological or end-time judgment. So I just want to make you aware of that information so you understand the relationship between Jude and 1 Enoch and what evidence we have of the text of Enoch, specifically 1 Enoch. And if you need more information or want to review that further, just go to my note, Omicron, on pages 7 and 8 of my Elihu Online Papers, number 5. Okay,